Hey guys, YonkouProductions here today, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm back to doing videos once again. It's been a while. If you guys have been following me on Twitter, I appreciate it. And if this is your first time checking out my videos, feel free to check out my old videos. There's quite a bit there, of varying quality, but I'm proud of everything that I've put out, you know? So, in any case, this is my face. For those of you who don't know, who want to put my name to the face, a face to the name, however it goes, you know. But anyways, I'm YonkouProductions, and today my video topic is Jujutsu Kaisen is a modern classic. And if you're fond of this video and you like what I end up talking about, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and leave a comment. I really want to, you know, I'm putting this out there so that I can get the discussion going and really get your feedback on this topic and your thoughts on this. And without further ado, I know I'm going to go into tangents, so please forgive me if I do end up going into tangents. It's just my flow of things. There's a lot of things that just come into mind, and I have my notes, so I'll try to keep it on point. But in the meantime, let's get started. Jujutsu Kaisen is a modern classic. So the first thing is, you can't really talk about Jujutsu Kaisen without talking about Shonen Jump. And as always, Shonen Jump is the magazine that publishes the series, Jujutsu Kaisen being one of them, and Jujutsu Kaisen being the latest in a bevy of successful series from the magazine. And so I've been reading Shonen Jump for the last 10 years, maybe more. Actually, probably definitely more. So with that in mind, the whole reason I bring up Shonen Jump is what decides what gets published, what doesn't get published. And so when Jujutsu Kaisen came out, I read the first few chapters, and Shonen Jump has this notoriously heavy hand when it comes to axing series they don't think it's going to be successful, and that happens. It's happened many times. Most recently, you'll see some series that do get a fan base, but don't end up, you know, going that deep, or it gets cancelled. And we've seen that with, for example, Phantom Seer. A few years ago, we saw that with Red Sprite, for those of you who remember. And so in Jump's history, there are a lot of series that may have cultivated a niche audience, but don't necessarily succeed. And that's just normal. And on the opposite side, there are some series that don't really hit, you know, immediately. They're not a series that people think, oh wow, this is the next best thing or the next biggest thing, you know, but they end up being huge. And most recently, the best example I have of that is Kimetsu no Yaiba. And there is a reason why I'm going into this sidetrack of Jump, but Kimetsu no Yaiba was one of those series, initially, it didn't really, you know, have a big audience. It wasn't like, you know, I remember, at least marketing wise, The Promised Neverland had a bigger marketing approach than Kimetsu no Yaiba. You know, I remember Sasaki-san was tweeting about it, saying, this is big series for Jump, you know, and admittedly it was, you know, but it ended up being that Kimetsu no Yaiba came, and as it got adaptations, as it kept on going, the volume sales started going up and up and up. And it's kind of crazy, because when you look at it from the editor's perspective, you don't know what's going to succeed. You don't know what's going to be an immediate hit. You don't know what's going to be a hit, yeah? I'll give you another example, yeah? When it comes to Viz themselves, back in the day, they used to publish Jump as a magazine, the digital version I'm talking about, and so they'd pick up the first 3 chapters of every new series, and they do that. Nowadays, they pick up everything. That's just how it is. But at this point in time, when Kimetsu no Yaiba came out, they didn't opt to pick up Kimetsu no Yaiba weekly, right? And that speaks to the audience that Kimetsu no Yaiba had at the time. Irrespective, it ended up being a massive hit. And once it became a massive hit, Viz ended up picking it up for graphic novels, and the anime was big, and, you know, it ended up being a massive series. Obviously, you know, the highest grossing film in Japan, you know, with season 2 oncoming. And the whole point that I'm making with this is that you don't know what's going to be a hit. So whilst I enjoyed Jujutsu Kaisen at the start, and I read the first few chapters, I kind of, put my foot off the pedal and I said to myself, look, this is one of those series that I'm going to wait to see how it goes, and if it, succeeds in Jump, I'm going to check it out. And so when the anime came out, I checked it out. And it's quite interesting to see the reception to Jujutsu Kaisen, especially at the start, right? Because by the end, this is more of a retrospective to some degree, at least now. But at the start, there was a lot of naysayers, right? I remember vividly the discourse with regards to Yuji Itadori in the first episode and his grandfather. And a lot of people said, oh, this is just a plot device. His grandfather died. They're just trying to pull at your heartstrings. And obviously the reception between Japan and obviously social media online and in America and the West was quite different with regards to that specific point. But I do remember that being a critique of Jujutsu Kaisen, people wanting to say, oh, this is bad, right? But in my view, it ended up being a cornerstone moment for Yuji Itadori in terms of his character development, in terms of his growth as an individual, because immediately we had a contrast. We had a contrast between a life that didn't have much fulfilled, meaning Yuji Itadori's grandfather, nobody came to his funeral, and it was just Itadori. And his grandfather tells him, make sure you help people, make sure you leave an impact, make sure you have a legacy. And so that immediately sets the trajectory for Yuji Itadori's characterization and his character development. So when he first becomes a sorcerer, what ends up happening is he does the typical shonen thing where he spouts idealisms. I'm gonna do this, meaning his idealisms was, I'm gonna save people, I'm gonna exercise all the curses. And it wasn't as extreme as Asta. No disrespect to Asta, obviously, but it's not some grandiose statement where it's like, I'm going to become the pirate king, or I'm going to become the wizard king, or I'm going to become a guy. It's nothing as grandiose as that, right? It's not saying I'm going to be the strongest sorcerer, right? But that's not the goal of Itadori. It's more personal, right? It's more personal. The impact that he wants to have, the legacy that he wants to have. He wants to make sure that, he doesn't end up alone like his grandfather. And so it kind of builds his characterization from there and his character development. And from there we have him spouting idealisms. He's saying, I want to exercise the curses and I want to save as many humans as possible. But he's also saying, I won't kill. He doesn't make a vow not to kill, but initially he's very against it. He says, if someone gets turned into a curse and I kill them, that makes me a murderer. And it's a valid argument to make, right? If we're talking about moral dilemmas. And so as the series goes on, and this is the thing that I like about it, is it sets up that initial premise, it sets up that initial idealism, that characterization. And one thing that Gege Akutami does is he really pushes characters into uncomfortable situations. And as we get deeper into the series, we get the Mahito arc, and the Mahito arc is important, impeccable, right? It's one of my favorite arcs in the series because it's what ends up happening in this arc, and this is not spoilers, but it's a pushback against those idealisms that Itadori spouts. It's a pushback against, this fantasy that you build up in your own head, thinking, oh wow, I'm just going to end up being a sorcerer who doesn't kill. You can't do that. And so Itadori is very much confronted in this arc. And so as a viewer, there is so much nuance to this arc that I was completely in love with it. I was in love with the series by this point. And I understand that some people, when they look at Itadori, they'll say, oh, Itadori is a bit naive. He's coming in, becoming a Jujutsu sorcerer, and he doesn't know nothing about it. And he's making statements that's not as grandiose, but he's making statements that have a profound impact on the story. He's saying, I'm not going to kill, right? I'm going to save all these people, and yes, he has that drive, he has that motivation, right? But that motivation can easily be used against you. It can be manipulated, and we do see that in the series as it goes along. And so one thing I do want to applaud Akutami for is how intricately he sets that backdrop of, this is the initial characterization for my main character Yuji Itadori, and this is how it's gonna travel, and this is how he's going to develop, and this is how I'm gonna challenge him, and these are the foes that exist. And so each arc presents a new challenge for Itadori, a new point of character growth, and a new conflict, inner conflict with regards to his own ideals, with regards to his own, aspirations, the ideals that he holds himself against, the morals by which he measures himself. And so I'm really fond of that. And I find that in itself, within the series, is a compelling enough argument to which by we can say, wow, this is a great series, right? If we look at from a combat perspective, from a power system, power scaling perspective, immediately at the start, before we even are introduced to the entire world of Jujutsu Kaisen, we get the pinnacle of strength. Immediately, Akutami decides, look, this is Gojo Satoru, the strongest sorcerer that exists, and we have Sukuna, the king of curses, and this battle that happens in episode 2, end of episode 1, episode 2, it is, before you even internalize how amazing that battle is, right? Before you're even able to comprehend to the scale to which Gojo is so powerful, we are introduced to the ceiling and the power system in such a phenomenal way in this series, and I was completely impressed. It acclimated the audience to the series, and it shows that Akutami was very consistent and very thoughtful in how he planned his power system, in how he planned the goals that he had for his characters, in basically avoiding the common pitfalls when it comes to power creep within series. Because if you immediately and justifiably discuss the power system or showcase the power system, what he's doing is showing, not telling. He doesn't tell you this. This is not like something that's told to you at the start. He shows it to you, and by showing and not telling, you are able to understand the gravitas of that moment later on in the series, when you do understand, wow, this is Gojo Sensei, this is Sukuna, this is the story and how it plays out. And so you see the ceiling by which you frame the series, and obviously the details get more intricate, the world building gets more intricate, the power system gets more intricate, but still this series remains consistent. So Gege Akutami basically shows us the power system and the ceiling to the power system, and immediately avoids power creep within the series. And that's some, you have to applaud Gege Akutami for that, because very easily you can get caught up to within the details. You forget the trees for the forest or the forest for the trees. You're unable to tell the difference, and you'll see yourself with a series that has insane power scaling that makes no sense, that it's just plot convenience. So Akutami generally avoids that, and I do enjoy that. And the next point that I do want to elaborate on with regards to Jujutsu Kaisen is the fact that Jujutsu Kaisen as a series, if you take the individual parts of Jujutsu Kaisen, meaning if you were to take, the characters, the plot, the events, right, the setting, any individual part, you take it and you realize it's not a phenomenal story. It's not something that breaks the mold completely, right, on an individual basis, right? But thanks to Gege Akutami, and basically what I'm saying is Jujutsu Kaisen is greater than the sum of its parts. Its individual parts might be great. Its individual parts might, hold some value, meaning some parts are more elevated than others in terms of their success, in terms of their relevance, and in terms of how much they resonate with readers and viewers. But what stands out, right, with Jujutsu Kaisen, it is the fact that it's greater than the sum of its parts. There are elements that you can draw comparisons with. You can draw comparisons to Bleach. You can draw comparisons to Naruto. You can draw comparisons to Hunter x Hunter. You can draw comparisons to Dragon Quest. In fact, Akutami says it's one of his inspirations. Ava is another one. You know, there's so many series that you can say, look, I see a segment of this series and this series and this series. But what makes Akutami stand out is the fact that he's able to take all these inspirations, create something new, deliver it in a package that feels familiar to the audience, but is also different. It doesn't piggyback off its predecessors. It's something that's contemporary and a bit new, and it's able to resonate with viewers and readers in a way that's slightly different to the series of the past that it may have been inspired by. And we'll see that a lot and I will elaborate in the ways that it does resonate a bit later on. Each character within the series, each character within Jujutsu Kaisen is basically such uniquely fleshed out. Like, they're so uniquely fleshed out and they're so well catered to in the series that each one of them could be the protagonist of the series, right? And you see that where, like, as a viewer, I can see this series being written from the perspective of Nobara, from the perspective of Fushiguro, from the perspective of Gojo, from the perspective of Aoi. You know, so many different characters, side characters and main characters. Each one of them serve a purpose. Each one of them are the protagonist of their own life. And you see that, like, motif expressed in different series, whether it's Mob Psycho 100, whether it's so many different series, right? That's the one that comes to mind, where each individual, My Hero Academia did it recently, right? You're the main character of your own life, right? But many a times, you know, characters might express that, but if you were to say, can you have a compelling story from a side character's point of view in a series, it's hard to do. It's not easy to do, because a lot of authors, I don't think they would be able to pull it off. I don't think there's enough substance within those characters, right? Because most of the time they have a plot purpose and they exist to advance the plot, and understandable, but when it comes down to character motivations, characterization, character development, their own backstories, all of those things, it needs a lot of effort. It needs a lot of creation, and it needs a lot of dedication to have a series that is immediately created from a different character's perspective. But when it comes to Akutami and when it comes to Jujutsu Kaisen, I can say 100%, you know, hand on heart, that any character could be the protagonist of Jujutsu Kaisen, and it would be a pleasure to read, right? And without going into spoilers, right, you do get that in one of the arcs. You do get that in one of the volumes where Itadori isn't the main character. And so that speaks to the series, that speaks to the quality of the writing, that speaks to Akutami as a writer. The next thing that I do want to discuss, and it would be remiss if I didn't discuss this, is the Studio MAPPA adaptation of Jujutsu Kaisen and my thoughts on Studio MAPPA. Obviously, you know, this is taking the broader anime industry into context and taking into context Studio MAPPA. If we're talking about Jujutsu Kaisen is a high quality work. There's no ways about it. There's so many episodes that stand out. You know, whether it's episode 12, episode 13, episode 19, episode 20, episode 25, you know, I can give you a handful of episodes, you know, that are S tier episodes. That's, you know, like, to give you an example, very rarely do I go back to an anime that I've watched and, like, spend time rewatching it, right? I think a few series that have had that honor in the past is like Mob Psycho 100, Parasite. Those are the series that, you know, I don't mind going back to. One Piece, obviously, you know, and for different reasons, right? But Jujutsu Kaisen is one of those series where I can just turn on an episode and be amazed. It's as if I watched it for the first time. and I've watched it for the 10th or 20th time. And that speaks to the quality of the work. That speaks to the quality of the direction. That speaks to the quality of the staff that have put into it. You know, the quality that they've imbued. You know, it's their hard work, sweat and tears, their late nights that have gone into the production of Jujutsu Kaisen. However, one thing that I do want to mention, and in fact, I would direct you to go to watch the Canopy Effect's video. Yep, the Canopy Effect. If you haven't seen his video on Studio MAPPA, and he goes into it with as much detail as possible with regards to the history of Studio MAPPA and kind of why they've switched gears in their approach to how they used to create anime and how they used to pick titles to now basically carrying the entire industry on their back. And as a fan, as a viewer, yes, I do like anime and I do like Shonen Jump adaptations, and I do like having a high quality series. But when you look at the industry, when you look at the level of overwork within the industry, and when you look at Studio MAPPA's own schedules, it's kind of tough to, in good faith say, wow, I want more of this. You kind of feel a bit guilty watching the show, watching what they put out. But part of it is, look, it's already been produced, it's already been made. The best thing that I could do is watch the show, support the show, whilst, making the distinction of, look, as a fan, as a viewer, this isn't what I want to see in terms of production. I don't want to see a studio that's taking on more than they can bear in terms of workloads, that has no pre-production time with regards to the titles they produce, and is basically going from project to project to project, losing animators and having staff that are complaining and saying, look, we aren't able to deliver our best work because of the circumstances behind each production that we work on. And before we even rest, we're working on the next thing. That's very hard to stomach as a fan, as a viewer. But I think it is worthwhile to celebrate the work of these animators, celebrate the work of their staff, bring into conversation these names, these animators who've given you a piece of their enjoyment. This is their labor that they've spent hours and nights and days on. At the very least, as a fan, whenever you see a scene, be like, okay, cool, this is the animator that did that scene. This is the staff member that contributed to this. This is the director that I'm fond of, And ultimately, hopefully that will be beneficial to each individual staff in their own profile and, in raising awareness of these issues. And so, Jujutsu Kaisen is a great series. There's no two ways about it, right? It has great characters. You look at Yuji Itadori, you look at Megumi Fushiguro, you look at Sukuna, you look at the relationship between all three of those characters, for example, right? One thing that is fascinating is Sukuna's fanboyism for Megumi. I really don't understand where it stems from, but looking at the dynamic between Itadori and Megumi, it's quite different to Naruto and Sasuke. And one thing that I do want to predict, as a fan, as a viewer, is that Sukuna is going to be the driving wedge between Itadori and Megumi. Alright, to me, the dynamic between Yuji Itadori and Megumi is quite healthy. And the only thing that I see being a negative or changing that dynamic into something that is conflicting in conflict with each other is basically to have Sukuna being the instigator of something very horrible, whereby which Megumi has to confront Itadori. But I digress. One thing that I've been saving in terms of discussing up until this point, and trust me, this is one observation that when I sat down and I wrote my script and I started talking about it, it made me very elated, because I recognize, and this whole video, when I say Jujutsu Kaisen is a modern classic, there's a reason why I say that. And once I understood, upon however many rewatches of the series explores the nature behind clan conflicts, for example, with regards to the Zenin clan, Maki Zenin, Mai, right? And, we have that system that exists within the series, the three main clans, right? And so, as a viewer, this is one driver. Yeah, it's a vehicle for cultural commentary. How? Because we see the inherent sexism that exists within these old systems that, you can relate to it. You can relate to it in the sense that, yes, if you were to look out into the real world, you would see an old system by which, there might be a lens of saying, look, there's sexism, there's some institutional discrimination going on. And Jujutsu Kaisen manages to incorporate that into the story. And if we go even deeper with regards to the sexism, some people in the world, they will fight the system, they will try to carve out their lane, and others will decide to navigate the system without overly changing it. And so one character you do see exhibit that perspective is Momo Nishimiya. She decides, look, this level of fighting the system, it's not for me. I'd rather focus on my own appeal, my own beauty, and try to leverage the negatives of the system into a positive for me. You give in to the system a little bit, and hopefully you end up getting what you want. But then as the story goes, and if I was to relate to this to reality, is how much of yourself do you want to lose in pursuit of compromising yourself, right? That's just my thoughts, right? So let's just say you compromise yourself to society's values, and you say to yourself, look, I can only navigate the system, I can't change it from within or change it from the outside. So how much of yourself are you willing to compromise in that event? I do want to see, for example, Momo's character. I do want to see how it goes. How successful is she? There's lessons that you can derive from it. And this is not the only one. And so you do see this exploration of very nuanced topics, whether it's nepotism, whether it's discrimination, whether it's sexism. All of these things are explored within Jujutsu Kaisen. Right? And this is something that when I really sat down and I thought about it, and I said to myself, wow, this is why Jujutsu Kaisen is a success. Like, not necessarily, it's not at the forefront, right? It's not something that is visible, that's saying, look, cultural commentary, political views, right? It's not something that Jujutsu Kaisen is outwardly doing. But at the same time, through these characters experiencing these things in a realistic manner, you can relate to these characters. You can understand the systems that they're facing and the challenges that they have. In my view, one of the best lenses that Jujutsu Kaisen has for exploring this cultural commentary, this economic commentary, is through the lens of Nanami. Nanami is one of those characters where, look, he basically works as a corporate job. He does his 9 to 5, he comes home, he then, rests, relax, and ultimately he's not living a fulfilled life in his flashback. He's a character that basically is doing a job for a paycheck, as many of us do, and when we get that paycheck, it's like, wow, I sacrificed all this time, all this, I sacrificed all my time working, and this work that I do, it ultimately goes into the pocket of someone else. And so the conversation piece that exists within this specific element is that Jujutsu Kaisen questions the nature of capitalism. It questions the system, right? Because Nanami says it himself. He says, the work that I do, in reality, it benefits some billionaire off somewhere, his pockets, his bottom line, that's what I'm taking care of. But in reality, the person that, is out here working a service job, an essential worker, for example, is doing stuff that is critical and valuable to the fabric of society. but they're not getting appreciated the same way. Someone who makes you coffee as you go into work, they're not being appreciated the same way as the person in the office window seat, 10 floors up, at a corporation. You got that window view. Is that what it's called? Fucking, I don't know. But, that nice view, that nice paycheck, all of those things are something that ultimately the value of capitalism that is extracted and given to corporate shareholders. So Jujutsu Kaisen, simply put, it manages to do within the conversation of Nanami. It's a commentary on society, it's a commentary on capitalism, because it asks you as the viewer who deserves recognition, who deserves financial compensation for the work that they do. Someone who is, punching numbers in at the office and then their work is feeding the bottom line of some corporation, or someone who, you go out there, you're buying your groceries, you're buying your coffee, you're doing all of these things, very regular things that are undervalued in society, that are done repetitively, and, ultimately, it's that relationship that you have with your barista, it's that relationship that you have with your local community that benefits each other. You benefit the community benefits you. It adds to the social cohesion, social harmony. It adds to the value, right, of society. And so when you question that, when you question those elements, it's a commentary on society, and that's something that Jujutsu Kaisen uniquely does, right? And as Jujutsu Kaisen is doing this is making it more than a shonen. It's a cultural commentary piece. It's a piece where we're looking at it and it's saying, look, these are things that might resonate with you as a viewer. It's not something that, we're just here to fight, bam, 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 battle over. There's a lot more substance to it, right? Even when you look at the introductory arc with Yuji's grandfather, it's a commentary on society. It's a commentary on something that we all go through, understanding our purpose in life, understanding what role do we have in society, what role do we have, how can we contribute to the world. These are very philosophical topics that many of us, or some of us might, sit down and contemplate over time and think, okay, look, how do I contribute to the world? What is my purpose? In terms of this worldly life, in terms of the benefit that I have to people, what exactly can I do? How can I benefit people? And so that in itself is a commentary on society. Even going deeper into the Mahito arc, for example, the relationship between Junpei and his fellow classmates, Junpei and his teacher, that whole situation with regards to bullying is a commentary on society. It's a commentary on society because how many people go to school every day and they might not have the most, beneficial support system, because ultimately schools are, when you look into it, the quality of a school is decided by where you live, right? Decided by, for example, if you live in the US, it's decided by the property taxes. So if you live in a good area, you'll get good schooling. And if you live in a bad area, you won't, right? And obviously, as you go across the world, it's very different. But I think as a viewer, you're able to resonate with these different pieces and say, look, there are people who've gone through bullying. There are people who've been unfairly picked on, but society turns a blind eye. It turns a blind eye to these situations. And so Jujutsu Kaisen, whilst it's telling a story, there are these underlayers that you go through and you understand, and you say to yourself, wow, this is a commentary piece on society. And this is why I think Jujutsu Kaisen stands out. Honestly speaking, this is something that I really had to sit down and contemplate and say to myself, why is it that I like Jujutsu Kaisen so much? What aspect of it? And so as I recorded this many times and I understood the different concepts of Jujutsu Kaisen, I said to myself, wow, like, this is not just a normal shonen. For example, and I did talk about this earlier, the Zenin storyline is basically a commentary on gender roles. It's a commentary on, I know people don't like this term, but patriarchy. It is. It's a commentary on sexism, because ultimately the Zennin storyline is one where someone who is capable, someone who is strong, isn't getting the recognition, isn't getting the support from the incumbents, the system at large, the family, right? This goes into familial relationships as well, because you can have a family relationship with someone. You can be family, right? You'll be family, mother and child, father and son, and ultimately that's not it's not a relationship that is beneficial either to the son or the father, right? Because there's neglect to the child, there's neglect to the father. The father is a product of neglect. There's different storylines that exist within Jujutsu Kaisen that honestly I'm surprised by it. I'm surprised by the nuance within the series. I'm surprised by how deep it goes. And I know I've really stretched this specific point and this specific aspect of this video out quite a bit, but it bears remembering, it bears some contemplation to think about. Look, why is Jujutsu Kaisen making such profound critiques on society, making such profound critiques on culture, making profound critiques on gender roles, and ultimately, as a viewer, I'm enticed by it. I'm enticed by it because it shows that me, at the age that I'm at, right now, I'm in my mid-20s now. I'm 25 years old, so I'm at a point in life where I can really contemplate. I need something a bit deeper. I need something a little bit more nuanced to find enjoyment from the series. And so I'm not the same 13-year-old or 15-year-old who could, find value in the stories that Naruto told, or, have the stomach to enjoy some of the story elements that existed in other series, right? And so I'm sorry to pick on Naruto. Look, Naruto is one of my favorite series. It's my gateway drug, So as my gateway drug, it basically got me into the medium as a whole. So I always, it's that North Star, basically. It's the North Star. And so if I refer to it, it's not in a way that I'm demeaning to the series. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's because I hold it in such a high regard, and because it has that much value to me as a viewer that I reference it. But ultimately, the point that I'm making is that I need a little bit more. I need to enjoy these sorts of stories. It can't just be the same sort of fighting. It can't be the same sort of storytelling that I'm accustomed to. And so this next generation of authors, this next generation of creatives are really challenging what exists in the medium and challenging what exists because they're more willing to tell a different story. They're more willing to challenge the existing narratives. And so that's something that I value a lot as a viewer. I value it a lot as a reader. And ultimately, you can tell that these people, these creatives, are people that similarly had the same sort of inspirations. And so similarly, they could pick apart the flaws of the past works, right? And whilst, they might not, it's just a lesson for them when they make their own series. This is how I want to do. This is the personality that exists within myself that I want to imbue in the series that I create. So I gotta say, hats off to Akutami. The series that you've created in Jujutsu Kaisen is a phenomenal series, and with just one season out, I can definitely say Jujutsu Kaisen is a modern classic. It definitely is. And if you disagree, feel free to rebuke this video in its 30-minute long glory, probably more, I don't know at this point in time. But if you like this video, once again, feel free to give it a like. Feel free to comment, share it around, let me know your thoughts. I really have spent quite a lot of time contemplating this video, and so I want your feedback, especially since I haven't done a video in quite some time. Hopefully you guys do enjoy this and share it around. You know, I'm not one to, you know, constantly toot my own horn, so, you know, I have to say, look, if you like this video, feel free to like it, feel free to subscribe, feel free to share it out, do your part. I appreciate it wholeheartedly. I'll have many more videos to come out for sure. So if you haven't seen my past catalog and you're new to the channel, that's all there. I did a video on Shonen Jump, the history of Shonen Jump, I believe it's called. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. I did a video on Toei Animation. If you haven't seen that, check it out. These are some of the best videos that I've had on the channel. And so now that I'm making content for the YouTube channel again, I really want to make great content. I want content that stands out. Videos that really inspire you as an audience, and you know, you feel like at the end of the day you didn't waste your time watching this video. And thank you for all your support. I haven't said this, but look, everything that I've managed to do is thanks to you guys. And I really say it from the bottom of my heart that I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the trolls. I appreciate the guys that hate. I appreciate the people that check in on me, you know, that tell me, look, Yonko, tell us your thoughts about this. Tell us your thoughts about that. You know, the people that really are inspired by just one person's tweets. That's all I can say. So I really do appreciate, and I want to communicate that. Thank you for all you've done over these past 9 years. You know, it's been quite a journey. It's been one hell of a journey. And let's hope that this isn't the final stop on the train, but we'll keep going. We'll keep going, and I'll try to deliver as much more videos in the future. Until next time, take care.